Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Football Friday edition of Birds 365, your daily deep dive into the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm Zander, Krause, joined by my co-host Johnny Mac, John McMullen, as we bring you the latest news, Eagles insights, and everything you need to know to stay connected to the Birds. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Friday morning?
Getting through it. Got some personal stuff I got to take care of, but we got to take care of the listeners as well with the Philadelphia Eagles. And, Jalen Carter showing up on the injury report. I guess that's the biggest news sort of out of nowhere with a shoulder injury. We'll get a better indication later today when the status report's got to come out for Sunday. My guess is they're trying to manage him through the week at this point, and he's going to try to give it a go. But we'll see how that shakes out.
Yeah, different looking show right now for those just checking in, for those listening on the podcast. As Johnny Mac pointed out, he does have some personal things to deal with today. So we will be, I'll have John from about 8 right now until around 8:35. Then we're going to let John drop off. I will do a Q&A. I have some great topics to talk about with the people as well after John drops off. So I'll give you guys some extra content. But 8 to 8:35, we'll have Johnny Mac. We'll talk about the injuries. We'll talk about the Eagles, and we'll talk about this game coming up versus the New York Giants. So appreciate everybody being here. Hit that like button. Drop a like for Johnny Mac, who carved some time out of a busy day today to give the people some Eagles content. We appreciate that from Johnny Mac. John, you gave us the lead story right there, man. Jalen Carter did not practice yesterday. I originally saw your tweet and your video of Jalen, and I'm thinking, yeah, it's probably just a rest day or something like that. Could it be just a rest day and they're nursing, some shoulder? I think everybody has pain when you play in the NFL in week 7. Or does this seem like it could be a bigger injury for Jalen Carter?
No, it's a legit injury when the Eagles do, sort of manage someone, or other teams in the NFL. You can put it on the injury report as did not practice, rest, maintenance, whatever. Um, And the fact that he wasn't on the injury report Wednesday indicates that in practice on Wednesday, um, and then you got to put him on there. So the good news is I saw him in the locker room before practice. So generally, if an injury is really there's a chance it's pretty significant. Generally, they're not going to come in the locker room. Um, and they're getting rehabs with the trainers or something of that nature. But the fact that he was in there was a positive sign, but not 100%. I mean, Jordan Mailata was in there, but Jordan just likes people. He likes to be around people. So typically, you don't see injured players in there. Dallas Goedert wasn't in there for an example. So he and Jordan are not going to play on Sunday. And everybody else, Slay also didn't practice. Now he practiced in a limited fashion on
Did I lose you,
Wednesday.
John?
I have you. Do you have me?
They might have lost Johnny Mac there on the audio.
I
Let
have
me
you. You
reconnect with
got me?
Johnny Mac. That was good stuff there. He's giving us a good breakdown on what's going on in the locker room. I should get him back soon. I don't know if he can hear me or not. I still have him in here. Yep, there he is. He dropped off. Let me get Johnny Mac up. Appreciate everybody being here this morning. It's going to look a little different, as I mentioned. I do have some great topics for all of you guys. With the Malik Neighbors, he's set to play. Eagles are going to have to run the ball. I have some incredible stats that I'll give you guys on this Giants run defense. Brutal. So Fred Johnson, I'll talk about versus Brian Burns. And then Dexter Lawrence, man. How are you going to stop Dexter Lawrence? Not good there. We go. Let's get Johnny Mac back up here. See if he's in. Johnny Mac, do I got you, brother?
Yeah, I never lost you. Do you have me?
Is it me?
I can
Can
hear
you
you.
guys give me a check in the chat if you guys can hear John right now? Because I can't hear John, and I don't know if it's me.
Yeah, anybody hear me? Because I hear Zander.
We can hear John, but Daniel says right now I don't have. Let me reconnect, John. I'm gonna John. They got you apparently. I don't have you, so let me see if I can drop off real quick, John, and I'll be right back.
So I don't know if anybody hears me, but I'll start talking about the injuries and the fact I assume you guys all heard me, but the fact that to
All
me
right,
it's a
I'm back in.
positive.
Johnny Mac, I think I got you.
All right, I was babbling. I don't know if anybody hears me, but I was babbling anyway. Um, I from the perspective generally when you see guys in the locker room, it's not as serious from an injury perspective. And Slay, I've seen both days, and he keeps saying the knee is fine, and he's trying to manage his way through it. But you have the MetLife turf, which has been a big story this week. Mekhi Becton said some wonderful things. Slay in the past has talked about it. Nobody likes playing there, but you got to play there. I mean, teams, the Giants and Jets play there all the time. So, I mean, it's something you got to get through. Um, it's interesting if you think about AJ Brown, for instance. He got injured in Week 18 at MetLife. That's where he hurt his knee, and he didn't want to talk about that at all. Because you probably don't want that in your head going back to that particular stadium, that particular field, that particular turf. Um, so there's some concerns there, but it's going to be an important day injury wise, and obviously you're not going to have Jordan Mailata, you're not going to have Dallas Goedert, and the hope is you're going to have Jalen Carter and Darius Slay. Milton Williams, another guy, he didn't practice on Wednesday, was limited Thursday. Now he flat out told me he's going to play, and he's not missing any games. So um, that's a positive because, boy, you talk about a nightmare scenario if you don't have Jalen Carter and Milton Williams. So at least you're going to have Milton from that perspective. And the Giants are banged up as well. We've talked about it with Andrew Thomas and even Dexter Lawrence being banged up. Now Malik Neighbors finally cleared the concussion protocol up there, so you're going to have to deal with him. Um, and he's been a spectacular rookie. He's sort of like their new Saquon. He's the only playmaker you got to worry about.
Yeah, right.
A little bit. I mean, that's probably unfair because Darius Slayton, but he's banged up as well. He can make a play. Wan'Dale Robinson is sort of like a manufactured touch guy, and he can make a play. But if you're real, I'm talking about really high level playmakers. Malik Neighbors is the guy for the Giants, and he's going to be back after missing 2 games with a concussion.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, he might have that AJ Brown type of effect on that Giants team, Johnny Mac, because I know he's their only guy, but he made Daniel Jones look a lot better on several throws this year. So I'm wondering, for all the criticism we give Daniel Jones here in Philadelphia, I don't think this is a game you want to take lightly. An NFC East battle. They did beat us last year with the Pizza Boy. So look, you got to come in, you got to take this game seriously, and I think Malik Neighbors makes a big difference for that offense.
Oh, he does. I mean, his first 5 games were historic. I
Yeah,
mean, I think he had the second most receptions ever for a rookie through his first 5 games. He was in the top 5, I believe, in receiving yards in that category. Now, most because of the shift in the game, most of those names have been more recent receivers, guys breaking those records. Puka Nacua was the record he was chasing. So that kind of tells you because the game has changed so much and evolved towards the passing game so much, you see those types of statistics dominated by recent rookie receivers. But amongst the group, even with that group that has been more productive than usual, he's been really good. He's legit. He is really a big time playmaker.
Yeah, no doubt. 35 catches this year, 386 yards, and 3 touchdowns in 4 games for Malik Neighbors. That's no joke. That's a good player, a rookie in the league, and he's going to be somebody we're going to have to watch out for. Who do you think will stick on him? I know it's not really our defense. We don't play man like that, but I'd like to see Quinyon Mitchell lined up on him a lot. I don't know if it'll be that way, but if you're the Giants, where would you try and game plan him to go up against our defense?
No, it's funny you say that because when Slay went down last week, we were talking to Quinyon yesterday, and asked him, was there any thought of moving around with Amari Cooper? Now,
Right.
Amari Cooper isn't what he once was, but Quinyon said no. He just stayed on his side. So there was no, even without Slay, it was just next man up. And that's the way Vic's going to handle it. I mean, if there's anybody that's going to travel on a particular week, it's going to be Slay. Certainly not Quinyon. So, yeah, that's not going to happen. So, from a standpoint of Brian Daboll, if he wants to get Malik Neighbors away from Quinyon Mitchell, he can do it pretty easily. So that's another maybe thing that the fans aren't going to necessarily like about this particular defense. But there's not going to be a lot of traveling, even with Slay. Never mind without him.
The other two receivers the Giants have, Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson. Darius Slayton has 24 catches for 301 yards and a touchdown. And Wan'Dale Robinson, who's a good slot receiver, actually, has 37 catches for 280 yards and 2 touchdowns. So Daniel Jones is getting that ball out over there. Those dudes are racking up some pretty good numbers for those 3 receivers. We'll see how the Eagles' improved secondary looks versus those guys. Johnny Mac, I'm going to go into some running stats with you because coming into this game, John, to me, it looks like the Eagles should run the damn ball. Now, you brought up an interesting point yesterday about the owner and him maybe wanting to take Saquon out of the game from a game plan perspective solely because of how butthurt he is about losing him to the Philadelphia Eagles. But I can't look past some of these stats. The Giants' rankings right now in run defense are putrid. They are run defense DVOA. They're ranked 29th in the league. Rushing yards per game allowed is 132.4, good for 29th in the league. Their rushing yards per attempt is 4.7 yards per attempt, good for 31st in the league. And their rushing first downs per game allowed, 7.9 a game, good for 31st in the league. And I will point out there are other 4 of the top 7 of the Giants' opponents this year. 4 of them were in the top 7 and most pass-happy teams in the NFL. So teams that really don't come in looking to run have played against the Giants, and those are the numbers. If you're the Philadelphia Eagles and you just signed $12 million, Saquon Barkley, he's returning home to play at MetLife Stadium. Johnny Mac, let's turn around and run the ball when you hear those stats, right?
No, I'll make a little correction just from the standpoint. I don't think John Maris going in and saying we're going to game plan to stop Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, no.
I think it's human nature that Brian Daboll and Shane Bowen, his new defensive coordinator, and Joe Shane, but I'm talking about Daboll and Shane specifically, the GM. They're going to lose their jobs if Saquon Barkley goes for 200 yards in his return to MetLife Stadium. Now, I'm not going to say they're going to get fired like next week, like Robert Saleh, but they're going to lose their jobs um, if stuff like that happens. So I think there's going to be an overcorrection, maybe, and I think maybe the Eagles. I think how you should look at it as an Eagles fan is you can use that to your advantage because I think they're going to be hyper focused to their detriment to maybe where they shouldn't be on stopping him so they don't look bad or as bad. And that gives you an opportunity to take advantage of things in other places. Now, maybe it doesn't. Maybe they don't care, but I find it hard to believe. But watching Hard Knocks, I mean, the poor guy, and I'm talking about Joe Shane. He's got to explain. And it's pretty evident, and I say it all the time, and Eagles fans get mad at me sometimes. I'm like, look, the Giants shouldn't have signed Saquon Barkley. Not even the decision for him. They're not in a position to take advantage of a player like that. They went through it for 6 years.
Right.
How many more years you got to go through it? The Eagles are in a different situation as a potential contender, although they've disappointed largely due to injuries and some other issues, and people are disappointed with them. But on paper, at least, all right, they might be in a position to take advantage of it. The Giants just weren't. I mean, they just weren't, and they didn't, and they haven't. So to do it again is just an insanity. And I would, if I were Joe Shane and John Mara acted like that, I was like, really? I got to explain this to this guy? But you have to because it's your boss.
Yeah, it's your owner, Johnny Mack. He ain't
Yeah,
explain. Yeah.
I mean, and you got to pay, you got to pay lip service to it. But you know it when he goes home at night, he's like, why do I have to explain this? It's blatantly obvious. So yeah, I mean, but the bottom line is they're going to lose their jobs if he goes nuts. And even though that's not the way you can go about it, and that pretty much sums up the New York Giants as an organization, as a poor organization, um, they can't handle something like that. So I think the human nature aspect of it is they're going to do everything to make sure that Saquon Barkley doesn't embarrass them again in a trip back to MetLife Stadium. That's the feel I get going into this game.
John, biggest advantage I think for the Giants coming into this game, just looking at from the opponent's point of view, they lead the league right now, first in the league in sacks. You got Fred Johnson, who's stepping in for Jordan Mailata against Brian Burns, 3 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 23 tackles this year. And then you have the greatness of Dexter Lawrence, which you talk about all the time. He has 7 sacks and 19 tackles early in the year, and as a team, they have 25 sacks. John McMullen. That is a good output for that Giants defensive line. If you're the Eagles, how do you contain that coming into this game?
Yeah, it's going to be difficult with Fred coming. I mean, you typically don't worry about this stuff with Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson out there. It doesn't matter who it is. It could be Nick Bosa. It doesn't matter. Um, those guys tend to handle um, their jobs pretty well. And this is a week where if you had Jordan, you probably go in and say, all right, well, we got to figure out how to block Dexter Lawrence. But that, while it's never easy, it's a little bit easier for the Eagles than most teams because then you can start sliding help Dexter Lawrence's way. You double team him, like the stories of Aaron Donald. He never they never not double teamed Aaron Donald.
Right.
Every time they would figure out where he was and they would slide protection that way. Um, you can do that when you don't have to help your tackles at all. Now all of a sudden, you got Fred Johnson at left tackle dealing with Brian Burns for the most part. Um, you're going to have to give him some help at times, whether it's, putting Jack Stoll on that side, chipping, maybe Saquon coming out of the backfield, or maybe, Landon Dickerson helping out a little bit, at least when Brian Burns maybe takes an inside move versus an outside move. So you got to consider all those scenarios to try to help. And typically, one of the biggest luxury for any of the Eagles coordinators that the fans dislike, dating back to really far past, because the strength of this offensive line has been what it's been over the past 10 years or so. They put their tackles on an island and say, "Go do it." And not a lot of teams can do that. Um, and it was interesting. Fred Johnson was talking about it. They put him on an island on the play that won the game, and he did enough to keep Myles Garrett out of there. But I don't know if you can do that consistently. It's not Myles this week. It's not quite that good, but Brian Burns is a very good player. Yeah, it changes the way you have to play, and and you sort of learn how the other half lives because they barely help Jordan Mailata or Lane Johnson at all.
Yeah, we'll see what they end up doing with that. That should be an interesting matchup. John, I want to get into what you saw yesterday. I know you mentioned Jalen Carter already. We talked about that. We only have you for about 10, 12 more minutes. So just what you saw yesterday, did anything stand out in who you spoke with in the locker room yesterday? I know a couple of the players spoke to you guys. A.J. Brown spoke. Anything notable from yesterday at NovaCare Complex worthy of letting the listeners know?
James Bradbury showed up. James Bradbury showed up.
Wow.
Uh, uh, I have not seen James since he went on injured reserve, and all of a sudden he's there. I was joking he's probably back in Alabama, and bang, he shows up. Um, and you know, obviously that situation is what it is. He's almost working as an extra coach with the young defensive backs, and he's getting closer to being healthier. He described himself as day to day. Still don't see a role for him. I mean, they can't even get Sidney Brown activated, so there's not a ton of places to go with James Bradbury. But it was good to see him. Good guy, as mentioned. Um, you know, the silver lining for him is he's making his money and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure he wants to play and contribute, but um, Eagles went in a different direction. But it was good to see him at least.
Good to see Dave James Bradbury back. We'll see what they end up doing with him. Maybe he'll transition into coaching, Johnny Mac. We'll see what they end up doing there. John, keys to the game for victory for the Philadelphia Eagles coming into this game. We'll talk to you again on the pregame show when you'll be at MetLife Stadium. At least I think that's your plan. I'll talk to you after the show about what you have going on. I know you have some personal things going on. Keys to the game for the Eagles coming into this one to win.
Well, number one, I think you talked about is pass protection. It's going to be interesting to see how they try to help Fred Johnson. And we talked a lot earlier in the week. Well, do you move Mekhi Becton outside? Um, it does look like, because I did see Jordan yesterday, Jordan Mailata. It doesn't look as serious as maybe it looked originally when all the video came out of him on the crutches after the game and not moving around well. He ditched the crutches. He was limping, but he was walking on his own. Um, so maybe it only is going to be 2 games, but 2 games is 2 games. I mean, he's been one of the best left tackles in football early in the season. Um, and they're, as I kind of mentioned, they're not the same when he or Lane are not on the field from a pass perspective. You can't just, it's a luxury. As Kellen Moore is the offensive coordinator, you can't just ignore it and say, all right, next man up, let's not help, let's not block. Or as you mentioned, the Giants and how good they've been on the pass rush, and how much they've gotten home this year, even without Kayvon Thibodeau's on injured reserve. They still have Brian Burns. They still have Azeez Ojulari. So they got some guys who can rush the passer. So number one, I would think is protection. Um, Defensively, I think you're always super concerned with Daniel Jones about his ability to run the football. And he is way more athletic than people give him credit for. And he's been running it and running it effectively this year, coming off the injury. And he's also, he's a big guy. He's more like a Jalen Hurts type in the fact that he'll put his shoulder down. He'll try to get that first down as opposed to being the scat back type runner, more of a physical runner. So that concerns you. And with Neighbors back, you got a real threat. So you gotta have your P's and Q's in order in the secondary. Make sure you're not busting coverages and communicating well, because he can make big plays down the field. But all of that. They're an NFL team, so they have good players. I talk about it all the time. But overall, from a perspective of the New York Giants are not a good football team. So I mean, if you bring your A game to MetLife Stadium, which too often in the past few years the Eagles have not done, it's been a little bit of a house of horrors for Jalen Hurts, whether he's playing the Giants or the Jets. Um, you should win the football game. Divisional game, that complicates it because you have the familiar nature of playing the opponent and these coaching staffs. The Giants have made some changes. No more Wink Martindale, but Nick Sirianni's very familiar with Brian Daboll and vice versa. Um, so that factors into it. And usually division games are closer. But I mean, they should win the football game. Let's be honest. This is not a good team, the New York Giants.
No, they're not. John, one other question here before I get your prediction on the way out here. Appreciate you checking in this morning, John. Hope everything is well on the family side and with you and your wife as well. And I know she had suffered a loss yesterday. So hopefully everything is good with you guys over there. We appreciate you being here this morning. John, Eagles defensive line, Eagles pass rush showed some signs of life last week versus the Cleveland Browns. 5 sacks, finally getting on the board. In a meaningful way. Bryce Huff was in that 4-point stance, and he looked a little bit better. The Giants are not equipped to replace their left tackle, John. They're losing Andrew Thomas, who, by the way, is a tremendous football player, but he is out. He is the best guy on their O-line, and he's out. Um, they're not really in a good spot to replace him, John. Their backup there, Evan Neal. They're not even practicing him at left tackle, and he was, I think, a top 5 draft pick a couple years ago out of Alabama. They're not even practicing him at left
Yeah.
tackle, so it seems unlikely to me that the game is going to come and they're going to roll him out at left tackle. So
No.
they have a couple other options there. Maybe they could move Illuminor over. They have a couple other backups on the roster, maybe Azudu and Stinney. I don't think they'll be in there, or maybe Azudu would be in there. But anyway, it looks like it could be a feast day off that left side for the Eagles' defensive line. What do you expect from the pass rush coming into this game?
Yeah, it's an opportunity. And, obviously the pass rush needs to get a little bit of confidence and a little bit of success that they started to get at Cleveland. That's been the bugaboo for the Giants for years is poor offensive line play. And they finally get a big time player in Andrew Thomas and they lose him for the season. So that's obviously a disappointment from their perspective. My guess is Illuminor is going to be moved over. And then you start talking in the effect, all right, you're gonna move him from right tackle to left tackle, and maybe he's serviceable. And then you got to put Neal in at right tackle, and you're affecting 2 spots, so it could work to the Eagles. Certainly a favor. Um, but the Eagles are dealing with the same thing with Fred Johnson. Now Fred's gotten to play a little bit, so
Yeah, I mean, he also Fred Johnson. I mean, people are high on him. John, he did give up 11 pressures and 38
Well,
pass
that's what I
rushes in that
mean. It
first
ain't
loss.
great. I love. Fred's a great story on a personal level.
Yeah,
It's hard not to root for the guy. But yeah, it hasn't been great when he's
no,
out there. I mean, if people think that, it's not the case. So it's fun to say next man up, and the Eagles are hardly the only team that says that. That's the approach you got to have. But starters are starters for a reason, and high level starters are high level starters for a reason. And that's what Jordan Mailata and Andrew Thomas are. And they happen to play the same position. So both teams are up against it, trying to replace them. Um, and I like the Eagles' thought process better. Don't affect 2 spots. And then the Giants, what they seem to be wanting to do or are going to do. Um, but both teams are going to have trouble at left tackles the way I look at it.
good stuff there, John. We'll get your prediction. I do want to correct one thing, which was my mistake, and I apologize to everybody listening. The run defense numbers I gave for the New York Giants, they were the 2023 numbers. Shame on me.
Oh boy.
No, they're still bad in 2024,
Yeah.
but
Well,
the
they're bad at
31,
everything.
31, that was a 23. They're a little bit up this year, still bottom 2 in the league in rushing yards per carry at 5.24. So my apologies for everybody. Those are the 2023 stats, and I'll get you guys the full 24 stats coming up. John, your prediction coming into the game before I let you go, brother?
Um, yeah, the Eagles' struggles at MetLife Stadium recently have been real. That's the Jalen Rager game with the two drop passes. Jalen got hurt there. AJ got hurt there. Um, Nobody likes the turf. I think that plays into people's heads a little bit. Um, but they got to find a way to win this game. I think it's going to be similar to last week against Cleveland. It's going to be ugly at times, but they're going to find a way to win it. Um, just more talent, just better equipped, and this is a game you can't lose. I don't want to. It's still early in the season. I don't want to overstate it when people throw must win. There's no must wins at this point of the season. Um, but the way things have gone this week and all the nonsense surrounding Nick Sirianni, you can imagine losing to a New York Giants team. What next week would be? Eagles got to stem the tide and just get out of there with a win. But I do think it'll be closer than people expect, and probably a 23-20 type game. The Eagles get out of there by the skin of their teeth.
23-20, Johnny Mac predicts. John, before I let you go, I'll just respond by saying this. I will disagree. I think this is a must-win
Must. No
game
such
for the.
thing.
And the reason I'm saying that,
Statistically,
John, is because the floor is going to fall out from this frickin' team if they can't muster their way past the New York Football Giants.
yeah. Well, there's still time to turn it around.
Oh,
Look,
there is. But
I
shit,
said
you
that
better
about
be competitive in the division, John. That would put the Giants at 3-4 and us at 3-3. And that would not look pretty with the
but
Commanders.
even if you're in the NFC North at this stage, you know, it wouldn't be over. But remember, the division ain't good. So, in the worst case scenario, I get from your perspective, oh, the week will be miserable for the Philadelphia Eagles if they lose that
Oh, it'll be
particular game.
miserable. Yeah.
I'm just saying it from a realistic standpoint, they're still in it because the NFC East is so terrible. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yep, no doubt. John, thanks for joining this morning, man. Great stuff. As always, we'll talk to you again on the pregame show. Hope everything goes well today for you, your wife, and your family. Sorry for the loss over there, and we appreciate you checking in today to give us some insight. The number one Eagles beat reporter, everybody, John McMullen. John, thank you, man.
All right, thanks, guys, and thanks for listening. Sorry, I couldn't give you the full 2 hours today, but hopefully Zander can pick me up.
I got you.
You need people to pick you up at times. So I
John, I
appreciate
got
it,
your back,
everybody.
brother. Thank you,
All right,
man.
thank you.
Yeah, there's Johnny Mac joining us here on Birds 365. Great stuff from John, and we appreciate him checking in and taking some time. I know he has. There was a loss on his wife's friend. I believe it was his wife's best friend's mother passed, and they were all a very close knit community. So John's hosting some people before the viewing and some stuff today. So pray for John and John's family. Hopefully they are all good. Appreciate everybody being here. Let me thank everybody, as I always do, for being here on JAKIB Sports. Appreciate all you guys, man. We got some great stuff to get into. I don't know if I'll be able to give you a full 2 hours today, but I will definitely get into some of my keys to the game, what I'm looking at coming into this game. I don't think this game is as easy as we might be thinking. I know the Giants are the damn Giants, and they don't scare me at all. But it's the NFC East. Eagles have not been playing as good as they should be playing. They have not played up to their talent level. And that gives you some pause. So they got to come in here and really put it all together and get a win. So let me get to the two super chats. Eduardo, this is a shout out for the greatness. And this is one of the most beautiful names you could have for a girl. Alexandria. I love that name. Big shout out to Alexandria Reza. Eduardo says, Zander, I'm on the road headed to New York City with my beautiful daughter, going to visit the Big Apple and catch the Eagles game. Can you shout out my girl, Alexandria? Absolutely, I can do that, Eduardo. Big shout out to you, Alexandria. And Eduardo, you're a traveling man, my brother. You were in Brazil, in Sao Paulo for the Eagles opener. Now he's up in the Big Apple. Maybe you'll run into my brother on the street who's up in the Big Apple as well. My brother's a big New York fan, everybody. He's I told you, if you're a hockey guy, I did not grow up a Flyers fan. I hate to break it to you. I'm not a 4-for-4 type of guy. If you think I am not. I do not like the Flyers. I've never liked the Flyers. So I am actually a Rangers fan with my brother. I grew up a Devils fan because I was a goalie. I showed you guys my awesome goalie mask. I'm not sure if you all saw that, but I did show that at one point on the National Football Show. And I was a Martin Brodeur fan. So when Marty retired, my brother and my dad, who are both big Rangers fans, recruited me over. That was about 10 years ago or somewhere in that range. And I've been rooting for the Blue ever since. So I'm not a Flyers guy. But enjoy your time in New York. Eduardo, appreciate you, brother, for being here. Good stuff. Joe Whipp calls me a traitor. Joe, I'm all right with that because sports is not a monolith, Joe. And I'm going to root for who I want to root for, Joe, but I appreciate you being here, brother. Joe, by the way, are you down there for that SpaceX thing? Because I saw your email. That would be pretty tremendous if you were. Kenny Sprague checks in, another super chat. Kenny says, just want to clarify, when we lost to New York Giants, it was Tyrod Taylor, not the pizza boy. He only threw 2 passes. Good clarification there from Kenny. He's like, I'll take some disrespect, but I'm not taking that much disrespect. Tyrod Taylor's a little bit better than the pizza boy. Good stuff there from Kenny Sprague. I'm going to get to a commercial. Kenny, one more checks in again, says, Slay been injured the past 3 times at MetLife. Kenny, it's a good point. I was going to ask John about that, but John doesn't like to engage in. Remember, he's a reporter, everybody, so he has to hold integrity. I don't believe that John would make an assumption about that, but it is interesting to see what's going on there. Ultra Ronan says, Xander's not rooting for the Birds. Ultra, that's not what I said. Look at me in my Eagle shirt. No, I was talking about the Flyers. I'm not a Flyers fan. I'm not a Philly 4-for-4 guy because I do not like the Flyers. But good stuff there. Appreciate you all being here. I'm going to get to the commercial break. We'll come back. We'll kick some topics around. I'll take some questions from you guys as well. Appreciate all the questions. Hit that like button. We got to talk about this Giants O-line, where we're going to pick on them. They're missing Andrew Thomas. That's a big loss. We got to talk about this Giants run defense, what we're going to do to kind of take advantage of that, and what should be the approach, for the Eagles coming into this game? Is it pass happy? Is it Saquon Barkley? Do you anticipate the Giants taking Saquon out of the game? I think they could try. I think John had a good point about that. Sometimes you cater to what the owner wants, right? So we'll see about that. I'll get to the commercial break now. Appreciate everybody being here. Good to see you, Flex. Good to see you, Daz. Ian East. Appreciate it. Ian, did you make it back home? My friend Ian is from I don't want to say Australia. Where are you from, Ian? I forgot. I know you're somewhere over there in Europe. And he was over here in Philly for an Eagles game last week for the Browns game. So good stuff from Ian, a big traveling Eagle fan. He was here in Philly. Did you make it home, Ian? And did you enjoy your time in the great city of brotherly love? Let me know, Ian. I will respond back to you in the chat. Let's get to our commercial break. Appreciate everybody being here. Back in 3 minutes on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.